My name is Cody D'Arcland, and I'm a Technical Marketing Manager on Console with HashiCorp. And I'm going to take you through the process of joining an EKS deployment to HCP Console. In our last video, we talked about the HVN and we got our actual connectivity set up back into our AWS VPC. We've got an active peering connection now set up to that VPC, so any resources we deploy into that environment should be able to communicate with our HCP environment as long as we've set up the right security groups. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and bring on an existing EKS cluster into HCP Console. So let's jump into Console, or into our HCP Console, and we'll go ahead and grab the public URL. Open up a new browser tab and launch it. We'll see an error message because unfortunately we're not logged in by default. You can see that by the login message on the top. So we'll switch back into HCP and we'll generate a ACL token. We'll grab that ACL token, switch back into Console, and select our login, and if we paste that in, we're logged in successfully. We can now go into the nodes view and see any nodes that are available in the environment. At this point, we're going to go ahead and start configuring out our actual Kubernetes deployment. So we'll switch into the command line. We're going to set up a couple of environment variables. First, we'll export a value for our HTTP token. We'll also export the installation name of HCPGA. You'll notice that these steps that I'm following now are also in our HashiCorp Learn guide if you viewed them. I highly recommend checking out HashiCorp Learn for the HTTP guides, specifically the one on connecting an Elastic Kubernetes Service cluster to HCP Cloud Platform. That's the one we're following today. We're going to create a couple of Kubernetes secrets based on the configuration files that are in this directory. In order to get these configuration files, we can go into HCP and select this download client config, which will ultimately download an archive file that we can use to access these files. So we have a ca.pem and a client config JSON, both that come inside of that directory. The ca.pem is the certificate for the HCP cluster, and the client config.json is the actual configuration details for that cluster. We can cat out that client config and see the details within. We're going to create a couple of secrets inside of our Kubernetes cluster based on the configurations that are in this directory. So this one sets up the certificate based on the file that's in the directory as well. This one brings in the encrypted details for the gossip key. And this one brings in our bootstrap token for our ACL token. We're going to export a value that will handle our retry join settings. That's also in that client config JSON. And we're also going to set up our address for the HTTP API interactions. From here, we're going to create our configuration file. Now, if we take a look at this configuration file, we can see a few items within. We can see our data center configuration. We can see referencing the individual secrets we set up originally. We're referencing out the external servers, which is via the private address that we got from within the configuration files. We're turning on Console Connect, which is the service mesh functionality. We're setting up an ingress gateway. And we also bring in the CRD controller. At this point, we're ready to go ahead and install our console clients on EKS. We'll run our installation command and switch back into Console. If we watch this nodes view in a few moments, we should see the Kubernetes cluster come online and the client start to join into Console. After a quick refresh, we can see our Kubernetes nodes have come online. And at this point, we can switch back into the terminal and apply our application. We can see a number of resources have been created. We've used the CRD controller to deploy out some configurations, custom resource definitions into our HCP console environment. We've set up an ingress gateway, and then we've created several tiers of our application. If we switch back into Console and go to our services view, we can see these services starting to come online. As we refresh our UI, we can see those services are now there. And if we click on our API view, we can see a number of red X's. HCP console deploys in a secure by default configuration, which means that unless you specifically allow communication, that communication is denied by default. If we click on this X, we can see that the connection is denied because there's no intention created to allow this connectivity. Let's go ahead and select Create, and we'll do the same thing for our DB, our API to DB, and then our API to Redis as well. We switch back over into our command line, and we get a list of all of our services. We can grab the front end address, open up a new browser, and we can see that our app is connected successfully. So in just a short while, we've shown how we could go from an empty HCP console environment to bringing in an Elastic Kubernetes cluster, or Elastic Kubernetes Service cluster, into that HCP console environment. From there, we were able to deploy our application and set up that zero trust networking using intentions to ensure that our service-to-service connectivity is secure. From here, we can start to explore out bringing in those ingress gateway configurations, playing with traffic splitting, and setting up a more fine-grained policy to control how services actually move between. We can also bring in additional Kubernetes clusters and start to route traffic between those clusters and services living in all of them. This video is meant to be just a quick tour of getting your first Elastic Kubernetes Service cluster in place, which looks like we've completed. Stay tuned for more videos about HCP and how you can get started. Have a great day.